Good morning, and welcome to the Museum of the San Ramon Valley's virtual speaker series. I'm Dan Dunn, the director of the museum. In January, Dublin City historian Steve Minier told us the history of the Alameda County Sheriff's Department. Today, we will learn about the history and activities of the Friends of San Ramon Creek. Watersheds such as San Ramon Creek have played an important role in how the valley has been settled and remain a vital part of the ecosystem of the valley today. The mission of the Friends is to foster knowledge and good stewardship of our local creeks. Dick Heron and Mike Ancio are here to tell us about the important work of the Friends. Please use the chat window at the bottom of the screen for any questions that you have. Feel free to send in questions at any time during the presentation, and we'll address them at the end. And now it's my great pleasure to welcome in Dick and Mike. Guys?
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Friends of San Ramon Creek was started in 2012 by Beverly Lane and two friends. I started in 2013, and it's now one of my social circles. I highly encourage people once they retire to become active in volunteer work. It's always good to have more than one social circle in your life, and this is certainly one of my favorites. The San Ramon Creek watershed is the largest of 5 tributary watersheds in the Walnut Creek watershed. This slide shows the Walnut Creek watershed, which is actually the largest watershed in Contra Costa County, and we happen to be the largest tributary of that watershed. San Ramon Creek runs for 18.9 miles. It has 137 miles of creek channels. I don't honestly know where these numbers come from, but we've been using them for a few years, so I guess we will continue. 31% of the land in this watershed is held in open space and 69% held privately. That means there's a lot of private property along our creeks. The headwaters are in Las Trampas Wilderness on Bollinger Canyon Road. You can see on this slide, Bollinger Creek flows from north to south through Bollinger Canyon. It comes down near Crow Canyon Road, where it joins with San Catania Creek, which feeds from Norris Canyon area. Right near Home Depot, they join, and that's where San Ramon Creek actually begins. San Ramon Creek joins with a small stream, Cow Creek, over in the Greenbrook area, just south of El Capitan. Then right along Sycamore Valley Road, Sycamore Creek comes in. That's in the purple there. And that drains from the south side of Mount Diablo, comes through Blackhawk, and then along Camino Tasajara out to join up with San Ramon Creek. Green Valley Creek drains the west side of Mount Diablo and has several branches. And that's joined right near Diablo Road and San Ramon Creek. There are a number of smaller streams that drain off the east side of Las Trampas Ridge. Then up near Alamo, Stone Valley Creek comes in. And eventually in downtown Walnut Creek, San Ramon Creek joins with Las Trampas Creek, which comes in from Lafayette, and right pretty much under El Fornillo near Broadway Plaza, the two streams form, and that's where Walnut Creek begins. I find it very interesting to note that Las Trampas Peak, if you can show on the cursor, Mike. Las Trampas Peak starts just north of the saddle where Bollinger Creek begins. And then it flows to the north through Lafayette and then to downtown Walnut Creek. And at the same time, San Ramon Creek loops around to the south and then back north where they join up. Next slide. Friends of San Ramon Creek sponsors 2 to 4 library speakers, typically naturalists. We hope to have 2 probably in May this year and then 2 this fall. Next slide. We also sponsor cleanups. This particular place was particularly trashy. You can see some arundo reaching in from the far side, far bank. There was a patch of arundo on the near bank, and the arundo was leaning over and down into the water, and we did not have any large storms for about 2 winters. And we found, I think it was 200 balls. You can see at least 1 tire. There was a signpost from Hat McGee Park, a lot of broken up styrofoam, a lot of water bottles, plastic water bottles. So we try to go out and do trash cleanup before it gets in the water. In this particular case, we actually had to go in waiting for it. And our biggest task, Mike Ancio, my buddy, joined our group in about 2018, and I'll let you take it from there. Mike is our chief arundo killer. Beverly suggested he needed a title, and so that's the title he came up with, and we love it. The agencies love the title also.
Well, thanks, Dick. I want to talk about arundo in our creek and how we're getting rid of it. I probably should start a while back. The Walnut Creek Watershed Council, which includes friends groups and cities and town governments from the whole Walnut Creek watershed, started thinking about what's important to do in our creeks. I don't know, 5, 6, 10 years ago, and what's the biggest threat. And the thing that came pretty clear and pretty unanimously is this invasive plant called Arundodonax. That is just taking over our creeks, and it's taking over creeks all throughout California, and for that matter, the world. Every time I travel and whenever I watch TV, I end up seeing arundo. It just sort of stands out. So let me talk about a bit about what it is and what we're doing with it. And the net of the story is it's a pretty good success story in our creek. It looks like bamboo. It's all reed, and you can see it's quite tall here. And you'll see this is a person that's in that picture, and that person's probably 5 or 6 feet tall, and the arundo's 30 or 40 feet tall. So it is enormous. It consumes gobs of water, and it displaces all plants. When we remove it, there's nothing else growing there. And if there was a tree, the tree is on its way to dying or has already died, because the arundo has some sort of chemical that gets rid of it. It really provides almost no habitat for any other animals. We rarely find any nests or evidence of animals in it. Nobody eats it. It's an incredible fire hazard because it grows for 2 or 3 years and then it dries out. So got this 30-foot ladder of dried stuff that can burn. That's really bad. So it is a really bad actor. And it originally was planted because people thought it might stabilize the bank, but it's a really iffy proposition because they're very shallow roots. So in some cases, the water gets under the roots and the entire bank, arundo and all, slides into the creek. So it's by no means something that's good for the creeks. It's sort of unambiguously bad and huge and it spreads very quickly. So about 5, 6 years ago, we started looking at, okay, it seems bad. We see a lot of it, but how much is there really, and where is it? And we built a map that noted all the spots where it is and put a little shape in there that described what it was. And in the map on the left, you can see all those green dots. That's arundo in the other watersheds in the Walnut Creek watershed. And down on the bottom where it's shaded a little bit brown, you can see the yellow and brown marks, which are places where we have removed the Arundo and now it's in treatment. It takes a long time to totally get rid of, so it's not eradicated, but it's no longer a big thing there. We're just treating it. There's like 182 patches-ish. Every year we find a couple more in our little watershed. 183,000 square feet. That's like what, 4.5 acres. And it's mostly in between Danville and Alamo in the main channel. And what's interesting is it's on very steep slopes. It's hard to get to, a little bit dangerous, often, you know, almost a cliff in the creek. And a lot of it's on private property. It's not public property, so it's not easy to just go get permission. You have to get permission from the landowners to do it. But the really good news is around 85% of it is currently under treatment. So we're well on the way to being done here. And the overall watershed, there's about 450 patches so far found. There's probably closer to 600 when they actually, when we look and we find more patches. So it's a big problem. But this is sort of just a chart that shows some of our success. You can see the blue line on the right is how much we've discovered over time. And it increases every year because both it expands and we find more patches that we didn't see before. But you can see that red line is an accelerating, that's the amount we've treated so far. It's almost up to the blue line. And when it does, we've removed all the bulk of the Arundo. The bad news is the eradicated line is you don't know it's eradicated till it hasn't grown anything for 2 years. And it can look like it hasn't grown anything for 18 months, and then suddenly something will pop up. It's easy to kill if you know it's there, but if you don't go back and treat it, it'll just suddenly all grow back again. So we started back in 2013. We started with pretty small volunteer effort, and we got rid of about 12,000 feet in 6 years, which isn't really very much compared to the 180,000. So we knew we had to do a lot more to really get rid of it. And we decided we're going to get serious about this. We're going to get rid of this. This is our most important problem in the creeks, and we want to make it go away. So we did. And in 22 and 23, we removed 90,000 square feet, about half of it in 2 years. And we'll finish this year, except we have a few owners who are a little bit uncooperative because they like it as a privacy screen or they have some other issue about it. But mostly we'll have just 1 or 2 sites left at the end of the time. And then in 3 to 5 years of retreatment, people going back in to treat it with an herbicide, we'll call it eradicated. And, you know, there'll probably be bits and snatches of it growing up over the next decade or two. So it's not ever a finished job, but it's a success story at this point. And here's what it looks like. On the left-hand side, you can see all this area where it says next patch. That's Arundo, and it's like 30 feet tall. It is very dense. You can't walk through it. No medium-sized animal like a raccoon could easily walk through it. You might find a rat in there, but that's about it. And on the right, you can see where we've cleared it. And in the next year, and this one actually is looking from Front Street eastward. In the next year, that'll all have native plants or maybe invasives, but less severe invasives than Arundo, and it'll be green and look like a nice creekside hill. So it's a really awesome change, and it feels really good when you're working on it because you're making this really ugly, big, unambiguously bad thing go away. So how do we do that? This slide has way too many words to read on it, but generally the first step was what we did 4 or 5 years ago, use some sort of geographic information system to figure out where it all is so you know how big the problem is. And then you got to figure out how do you individually get rid of those. And we did small patches where we had a group of volunteers or a contractor come in and remove the Arundo using the techniques we knew at the time. And we looked at what was working and what wasn't working and what was efficient, where we were wasting time. And we modified the process, and I'll describe that a little bit later, to be pretty efficient at how we get rid of it. And then you've got to go to landowners, whether it's a public entity or a private entity, and get permission. And that involves Dick and I going and knocking on people's doors and saying, and usually wearing, our not very formal clothes, so we don't look at all threatening, and saying, hey, we're volunteers and we're trying to remove this really horrible thing from your yard. You may have heard about it or noticed it or whatever. And generally, after about 30 seconds, we get a pretty good reception for, a very cold knock on the door, and they'll give us permission to remove it. And then we need to get people to do this. If you have money, you can hire contractors, and we have had some success at doing that. But in the beginning, we recruited a volunteer team of just sort of our friends and other crazy people who have time on their hands and want to do something good. And it turns out to be, it's great exercise. It's very social. The group works fabulous as a team. It's fun because at the end of the day, you've actually done something and you can see it. And we do that by meeting on every Friday morning between April 15th and October 15th. Used to be a group of 4, 5, 6, and now it's a group of 12 to 14 people who do this. We work about 3 hours until we're really tired. It's exhausting, dirty, difficult work on very steep slopes with unsure footing. So it is not for everybody, but for the folks who do it, we do it because we really enjoy doing it. Last year we had 1,000 volunteer hours doing it, so a pretty significant amount.
I have to keep reminding Mike that the work is definitely not enjoyable, but the social aspect, the company of our friends is wonderful.
Yeah, it is true. We do it and we do social stuff. So we do parties and stuff afterwards. So keeping the team interested and excited has been a really important part of this program. And we update them every week after we've done something, talking about the good stuff we've done. And I think I'm very proud of how the volunteer effort is done. The folks are working really hard and they're doing a great job and work as a team. And it's just super fun. But because of our success, we've been able to convince some reasonable organizations to give us grant money to help accelerate the process. So we had it from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and as well as the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Their OSPR is spill prevention resources or something like that. But people who pay fines when they make a big spill like an oil company, we got about $80,000 last year to remove some arundas. So we were able to take out some giant patches. The biggest one is in Hapnagee Park. If you go past the dog park and look, there's a Native American site monument down there. If you look on the other side, there's almost a full acre that was solid arundo that is now cleared of it. I'm sure it'll be growing back soon and we'll be continuing to spray it. But it was amazing to be able to get rid of all that. We also get donations from Republic Services, who donates our dumpsters. So often we remove the arundo and we chip it into a dumpster, and that's a very expensive thing for them to provide. We appreciate theirs. And we've had grants from Contra Costa Fish and Wildlife Propagation Fund. Typically what they fund for us is our chippers, which costs $400 or $500 a week or $200 or $300 a week to rent. So we're going through some money, but it's great to have this and we're getting it done. And our partner in all of this is the Contra Costa Resource Conservation District, who acts as our fiscal agent, because we aren't a 501c3, but people can donate and people can give money to the 501, or grants can go to the RCD, and then they can pay our bills for us. So that works out really well. And we've got a couple really good one basically really good environmental contractor who comes and does this and does a great job for us. So that's generally how we approach the problem from a very macro sense, which is, a good process. But what's interesting to all of us is exactly, so what's that mean? What do you do? How do you remove arundo? And we've done some things with our group that I don't know that, well, I haven't seen before, and I think it's novel for most places. We had a bunch of mostly retired people doing this who aren't particularly strong and get really tired walking up and down hills. So, and Dick and I are both engineers used to trying to figure out how to make processes better. So we sat down and early on, after we'd done a couple of these where we're dragging arundo up hills, figuring, okay, there's got to be a better way to get this stuff out of here. Because the hard part is this stuff is down a 30 or 40 foot steep hill and it's very heavy and very big. And, how do you get it out of there without killing yourself? So what we decided is, we could build ramps that make it easy to haul the stuff up and down. So we've done that. We built, you can see on the left-hand side there, a ramp. This one, I think, is one of our bigger ones. It's like 90 feet long and maybe 40 feet tall, where it's 4 foot wide, just plywood attached together with 2x6s and held in place with posts in the ground that we build before we go start working on the arundo. And then sometimes the Arundo, the axis is from the wrong side of the creek. So you have to get across the creek. So again, we bought some more wood and we built bridges across creeks that are temporary. They stay there for just a couple weeks in the summer. No danger of being washed downstream unless there's a massive storm in the middle of the summer. And then on the right-hand side, we try to be careful of the hillside to not damage them, but more importantly, we try to be careful of our volunteers to not damage them. So we put ladders on really steep sections so that it makes like stairs to walk down to the site. So all this gets done before anybody shows up to the site, and it just makes it dramatically easier to do the work than it would be if none of this was there. And then we get our team in, either it's contractors or volunteers to cut it. And it's really manual. We go in typically with just loppers and cut it down to about 6 inches. You can see on the left-hand side there a small patch that Todd is in there. He's cutting it down. And on the right-hand side, you can see a more dense patch with 2 people working. And the interesting thing we found there is it's really easy. I shouldn't say this. It's hard work to cut. But you can cut 3 or 4 branches and then you're sort of stuck because it's covering up the rest of the stuff that you need to get to, and they're in the way. So you need someone right there while you're cutting to pull that piece away, drag it out of the way, and then maybe somebody else hauls it off. But it's a sort of 2-person effort when you're cutting to make sure the cutter can keep cutting. And we have some very tenacious cutters, folks who are working really hard and like to get in there. By the end of the day, they're dirty, they're exhausted, but I think they really enjoy that part of the job. And then we worked a lot on how do you haul this stuff. Typically, you're not right on the bridge, you're not right at the bottom of the ramp, or if you started there after you've cut for a while, you're a ways away from that. So what we've learned is that if you can get the Arundo stalks that are all like really long in a bundle with the butt ends together and maybe 6-8 inches in diameter, sort of this big, you can take that bundle all the way from where it's cut and then take it to the bottom of the ramp. We wrap a rope around it and the person at the top of the ramp pulls it up to the top, and then you can take that bundle and feed it directly into the chipper. So we've done some careful thinking about, we tried many things. We had made a big stack of Arundo at the bottom one time and then had like a truck try to pull it out of there. There's lots of different ways to do this, but this seems to be very efficient. And boy, when you're working as a team, it's just a flowing process line like a factory, and it feels so good because it just moves right through and you don't get any extra stuff piling up anywhere. It just goes right into the chipper. So we haul it over in bundles and then we pull it up the ramp. And then the bundles go directly into the chipper, as we said. And in this case, we're chipping into a dumpster donated by Republic Services, and you can see the chipped stuff. Sometimes we chip on the bank if it's either hard to get a dumpster in or there's really good place above the water line to chip onto the bank. And that's okay because once you've broken all this stuff, it won't grow again. I forgot to mention earlier that one of the big problems with Arundo is the propagation. It just spreads like crazy, and it does that 2 ways, one or multiple ways. But one of the ways it does is it just sort of falls down on the ground, and it's like bamboo, where it's got these little nodes every 6 or 8 inches, and every one of those will grow into new leaves and a new Arundo stalk, or it'll fall in the creek and do the same thing and very quickly root in the bottom, or it will break off and float downstream and plant itself somewhere else. If you chip it, as soon as you break those growth nodes, it won't do that anymore. So whether we chip on the bank or chip into the dumpster, either way, it's gone. It's still alive in the roots, but at least that part's gone. And then finally, we spot spray the stumps. We use an herbicide approved for use in riparian areas. It happens to be Roundup Custom, which is basically the same Roundup you buy, except without the herbicide, or without the surfactant in it, so it doesn't hurt animals in the creek. And we put a dye in it so you can see what you've sprayed before, and you spray just on those little nodes. So we're not spraying all over and getting on trees and other nearby plants. It's very focused spraying. And if you do a good job on this, you'll kill about 80–85%, you hope, before it starts growing back. And then this is that picture on the left is the really, really discouraging part. If you cut this, and probably this was one, we can't actually spray in the first part of our season by our permit. And this is what grows back in the first year. So that might be 4 months of growth after we had cut it. So it was nothing there in April or so when we cut it, and 3 or 4 months, it's 15, 20 feet tall. And, you know, you don't want to stand on top of it. It's going to grow right through you. But luckily, it's really soft and super easy to kill at this point. So we just machete that down to a foot or so, leave the waste there, and spray the stumps again, and you'll get dramatically less. And in the third year, you see on the right-hand picture, there's very little regrowth. So you actually do make progress. And typically by the 5th year, there's no growth to do. And this depends on the creek a bit. Our creek has a lot of water, so it's very aggressive at growing. Some other parts of the watershed, less so, like up in Pine Creek and Walnut Creek, you get very little regrowth. So once you get rid of it, it's, you know, you might spray it once or twice and it's gone. So that's sort of the story. What we're doing next is finishing up our watershed. We're going to get some more grant money, we hope, this year. We're applying for it to get rid of the remaining 32,000 square feet that we have in our sub watershed. So half of that'll be done by volunteers this year. If you want to join, I've got a website that you can go to sign up for that in the next slide. What we have done is there's 7 of us who are stewards who are responsible. Each of us has a set number of sites to go back to however often it needs. So monthly oftentimes to check for regrowth and spray during the summer. And we'll do that for 5 years or until it's eradicated. So we have stewards doing that. So it's well under control and managed. We keep track of how much we're spraying and where we're spraying so we can see what's regrowing and what's not. And then our compatriots in the rest of Walnut Creek watershed are also anxious to do this, but they don't have 2 crazy people like Dick and I to do it yet. So we're trying to build crazy people. And we're expanding this year. We're hoping to do a set of patches in Lafayette, another in Concord, another in Walnut Creek, which would be really great to get rid of those big green dots we had on the map in the early part of the presentation. And so finally, we do have a website that has a fair amount of information on Friends of San Ramon Creek, and there's also another section on Arundo, including what to plant afterwards. So if you're looking for more information, that's a good spot to go. And here's contact information for me and for Dick Heron. So I thanks for your time, and happy to answer your questions.
Thanks, guys. I have a series of questions actually for you. Mike and Dick, can you talk a little bit about the organization itself? How old are, not the friends, you guys friends, but how old is the organization? How did you come together as a group?
Beverly Lane started it with 2 friends back in 2012, as I think I mentioned earlier. And that first year, it started quite slowly. She had another volunteer, a retired fireman who lives over on the south side of Sycamore, who was interested in doing creek cleanups. And so he was quite instrumental in getting creek cleanups organized. Unfortunately, the museum actually poached that volunteer, and he and his wife are now helping with the single room schoolhouse project.
We
So
tried.
we lost him. And in 2013, we had our very first Arundo removal project near El Portal. And Leslie Hunt from Friends of the Creeks in Walnut Creek came down to teach us what she knew about Arundo removal. And basically that was to, just spot treat the cut stumps. And we had some volunteers from Rotary, I think there. I believe Newell was on site for that very first site. This was a couple who used to spend about $1,500 twice a year to have the Arundo cut back on their property. And now they have this beautiful grassy bench where they can go down by the creek and sip their wine in the afternoon.
Nice.
So we had some scouts do eagle projects to remove some patches. But our progress was still, very slow. Not particularly organized. Ideally, you start upstream and work downstream so that when it breaks off and moves downstream, it's it's not, it won't work its way upstream nearly so much. Supposedly the seeds of arundo are not viable, but I think some of them must be. Otherwise, I don't know how it gets to the upstream part. Friends of San Ramon Creek branched out then to have speakers at the library. About 4 years ago, we got a grant from Fish and Wildlife Committee of the county to buy an instrument, and we have 6 different sampling locations along the creek where we test different water quality samples. We submit that to another nonprofit, that data to another nonprofit, the Watershed Group and Watershed Network, and they compile the data and then submit it to a statewide database, which is available online, CEDEN, CEDEN. And so that's another key activity that we have. We have a small group that started doing bird walks along the creeks. The creeks are animal highways, and among those animals are birds. And so we had some local birders that got started, just barely started, and then the pandemic hit and things kind of shut down. I think they're trying to get that going again now. So we try to reach out to the community from time to time. We do have a meeting coming up on March 7th where we are helping to publicize a county watershed restoration plan. So we will be sending out a notice of that meeting as soon as we get our room reserved. So we try to reach out to the public, encourage property owners to take care of their creeks, and we also try to be a resource if they need some help.
That brings up a couple points for me. As you know, because I talked about it on our practice session, I live along Mount Diablo Creek. And I was going to bring up the point that Dick just made, is that the creek bed, from what I noticed, turns into like this highway for the animals and the birds in the area. So one of the questions that we had come in was, are there fish in the creek? How safe is it to wade in the creek?
I'll let you do that one, Dick.
Doc Hale, who is a local wildlife biologist who unfortunately passed away just last year, but Doc Hale did some fish surveys along San Ramon Creek in downtown Danville just about 3 years ago. And he found some bluegills. I've talked to some local people who take their kids out fishing, and they catch some bluegills. There are some California roach, which are small fish, about maybe 2 to 3 inches long. And those fish do seem to be resident in the creek. And they typically stay in the deeper pools. We do have some obstacles to fish, salmonids coming up the upstream. The drop structures, which are intended to reduce the kinetic energy of the water running downstream, to reduce the velocity so that erosion and flooding is reduced. Those drop structures are obstacles to fish moving along the stream too far. We certainly have turtles. We have lots of crayfish. The crayfish are an excellent food source for otters. We've seen otters, along San Ramon Creek. Wonderful animals to watch roll around and play.
Yeah.
We did have one of our volunteers who saw a beaver, which unfortunately had died, presumably someplace up in Mount Diablo. It came down Sycamore Creek, and the carcass then was eddied out right along Sycamore Valley Road. So we haven't seen any evidence of beavers actually establishing in our area. We see a lot of deer, foxes.
Yeah. So yeah, I was kept up all night because the frogs in Mount Diablo Creek were having a good time, I think.
You asked if it's safe to wade in the creek. And I mentioned in our practice session that if you're under 18, it seems like anything is safe.
Yeah, true.
We do see, kids playing in the creek quite often. Our water quality sampling does not sample for E. coli or, bacteria. So I can't honestly tell you how safe it is. There's also a certain amount of trash, perhaps broken bottles, glass bottles, that may be present in the creek. So I can't really encourage doing a whole lot of barefoot wading in the creek. But in spite of that, some of our volunteers have been known to do their fair share of wading in the creek.
So wade with caution, I guess, is the watchword. Let me turn to the Arundo killer on this question.
Yeah.
There was a question that came in about, does Arundo grow in the water?
Arundo does grow in the water. It typically starts on the land side, and then it tips its branches in the water. And as soon as they reach the water, they're very happy, and they'll grow roots that reach down to the bottom, and they'll establish themselves a whole new patch. And then within a couple of years, they'll collect all the silt coming down and make it look like they're on land again, and actually direct the water to erode the other side. So anytime there's a Arundo in the water, we're desperate to get it out. Hopefully we've gotten there early enough that it is new and the roots aren't too deep and we dig it out. There are times where you can't spray underwater, obviously, so we can't really treat it with herbicide there. But if it's pretty well established and we're having a hard time getting it out, we will chop it off above the surface and spray that they're like bamboo and that it's hollow tubes, and you can fill that with herbicide and it'll take it down into it. And we've had pretty good luck with that. I don't think we've had to leave anything in the water. So between those two, between digging it out and spraying it like that, it works.
Okay.
Typically when it starts sprouting in the waterway, it's relatively young, and then when we have a high water event in the winter, that gets torn out along with some of the soil and is sent downstream, where eventually it will eddy out and start a new colony someplace else.
Sure.
So the high water tends to keep the waterway itself clear.
How does Mount Diablo? How does Alamo Creek fit into the mix?
Alamo Creek begins in Mount Diablo State Park, just east of Sycamore Canyon. Alamo Creek comes down through Blackhawk, crosses Camino Tasajara, roughly where there's a car wash out there just beyond Blackhawk Plaza. Alamo Creek then continues down more or less through the Doherty Valley, and crosses those hills, goes into Dublin and Pleasanton, and joins up with Las Positas Creek and some of the other smaller streams down in the Amador Valley. Goes to Sonol and then goes on out to the bay with Alameda Creek.
Okay. I think that's it for questions, but guys, can you tell people who want to get out there and battle it out with the Arundo how they can help, whether by volunteering or donating? You know, how do they help the Friends do their jobs?
Well, both of those are good things. For volunteering, you can go to our website and it's got a page there where you can put your information in, and we'll get back to you and sign you up, and you're welcome to come out and look at what we're doing to see if it's something that works for you. Like I said, it's every Friday morning from April 15th to October 15th, and we're always looking for more people to help and join the fun. It is hard work and it is physical work, and you really need good footing. So if you're unsteady, it's probably not something that's going to work. And as far as donations, we do accept, the Friends don't accept money, but our fiscal partner, the Resource Conservation District, part of the county, is our agent, and you can donate there. It's they've got a 501c3, or at least a tax deductible portion, so it's a tax deductible donation, and we'll absolutely put your money to good use. So we need tools, we need chipper rentals, plywood, as you saw, for the ramps and things like that. So there's lots of ways that we do need some money.
So as I said, that's it for questions. I really want to thank you for coming on this morning and telling us about the Friends and their activities. I love living along the creek, and I'm glad that there's organizations like yours out there that are helping to preserve and maintain them. So thanks for doing what you guys do, and telling us about it this morning. And I also want to thank everyone else for viewing this morning. If you missed any of our earlier programs, you can find them by visiting the museum's website at museumsrv.org. This program today will appear early next week. Join us on Thursday, March 21st, when Dan McGovern will be our guest. Dan is the co-president of the Eugene O'Neill Foundation and the co-founder of the Eugene O'Neill International Festival of Theatre, based in New Ross, Ireland. Dan will talk about the significance of Ireland to O'Neill and the significance of O'Neill to Irish literature. If you like these programs and want them to continue, we ask that you make a donation by going to the museum's homepage, museumsrv.org, and clicking on the Donate Now button. And as Dick mentioned, we do poach volunteers because we need volunteers. So if you have some time you can give us and the Friends, that's a double win. So if you have some time for us, please contact the museum. I hope you stay safe. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.